Hello everyone, you're listening to 97.1 FM, that is WPCX in Clinton, South Carolina on the campus of Presbyterian College. Or you can listen to us on the WPCX app on iOS or Android. You're listening to Current Climate. Welcome everybody. I'm Brennan Carroll. This is our guest host, Lana Clayton. Because McHenry Brewer couldn't be here, he left early for Thanksgiving break. But before I want to get into anything at all, first, Lana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. I'm Lana. I'm a sophomore here at PC, and my major is political science, and I also wrestle here.
Cool. Okay, before we get into anything else, I have to do this disclaimer because I don't want to get fired, and I don't want PC to get in trouble because that also means I would get fired. So this program is produced by students at Presbyterian College in Clinton, South Carolina. Views and opinions expressed on the station are those of student producers and do not necessarily reflect the official views of the college. Thank you for listening. Okay. All right. So, some things happened. First of all, I wanted to address the fact that we're live again today because some weird scheduling things happened. I wasn't supposed to be live today, but I am live today, so that's great. And also, well, here's three political topics pretty much. So we have the Russia-Ukraine situation is one of them, though. So I know McHenry was very excited to talk about that, but pretty much there was this 28-point plan that Trump was trying to implement, and I don't know, like, have you heard about that at all?
No, honestly, I feel like he is always passing so many things, it's hard to keep up.
Okay, well, so the 28-point plan was sort of like, it was held in secret in, where was it? It was Abu Dhabi. Yeah, Abu Dhabi. Jared Kushner was like part of that. And like some of the points were kind of crazy. Like Ukraine would give up like 2 cities and like all sorts of stuff.
Dang.
Yeah, but in return, Russia would recognize Ukraine as like a sovereign state, like Kiev as a part of Ukraine and things like that. So that was the situation, and they've sort of compromised now on the whole 28-point plan. Now it's like 19. They kind of removed some of them, but Zelensky's on board with the plan, which is cool. We're pretty much just waiting on what Putin thinks about it for the most part. Because of the cuts or whatever. Originally, Russia, it appealed to Russia at first before the cuts. So we'll see what happens. I don't know what's to come of it. I don't know how likely it is that peace will be achieved. I hope so. And I know McHenry is looking forward to that one.
Honestly, it feels like this thing has been going on forever. Like, aren't they just fighting over land? Like, that's like the main gist of it.
Yeah,
they just
pretty
both
much
want the same land.
Well, like, pretty much. There's like from Putin. There's like alleged like NATO sort of overextension because back in the Biden administration, Ukraine really wanted to join NATO, and
I remember that.
Yes, we were really.
Yeah.
The administration at the time was really flirting with the idea of Ukraine being a NATO member, and Russia didn't like that so much for understandable reasons in their position. There was a claim that this is sort of like a breaching of a deal that happened way back in the Cold War era, and that we promised them this is the Vladimir perspective, I guess is what I'm going to call it. But basically, we made a deal with them. We said we're not going to expand NATO any farther east. We're not going to mess with Russia, and then we did attempt to spread it, and that was the justification for going into Ukraine, pretty much. I don't know. Unfortunately, our expert on this situation is in Mississippi now, so we can't. We don't. I don't have any notable insights with it, except that one good thing that came from it was that Trump was able to sort of negotiate with Zelensky on the NATO thing. So now there's not really security guarantees in the sense that they're not NATO. They're not going to be NATO.
Yeah.
But Trump was in the talks. I don't know if this part of the deal came through or not, but Trump was in the talks of putting American workers in Ukraine. And well, the idea behind that is if you have American workers in Ukraine, it's sort of like it's sort of a tripwire. So
that makes sense.
So if Vladimir like came into Ukraine, accidentally killed an American worker, that would be an issue. And so it's by adding a vested interest in Ukraine, you're sort of guaranteeing its protection without like doing anything on paper.
So they want to have an embassy in Ukraine, basically.
Well, unofficially, yeah, kind of. Like corporation, they want like an American company in there, like mining. I can't remember what he said. He was going to start mining something. I think cobalt, lithium, or something like that. Or he's trying to get lithium. I couldn't remember what it was. I'm not sure if that came through or not. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting development. A lot of people are excited about it. I still hold my reservations because I'm just you know, I'm skeptical when it comes to anything foreign policy wise because the last like
the Biden administration,
last like I don't know, I feel like even before that a little bit, like last like 5-7 years. No, we're not doing that. This isn't that kind of show. No, but like last like 7 years or so, I feel like have been sort of a letdown in terms of foreign policy. There hasn't been a long-lasting peace, I feel, but
that is what I do like about the Trump administration. I don't like his foreign policy, but I do like the kind of shutting down of the like immigration policies. Like I have a class right now, and it's just like he's shutting down a lot, and it seems bad, but I feel like he's kind of just cleaning up and, you know, getting ready for something better.
Yeah, I respect that position. Many have been saying like there's a little bit of disappointment there because during the campaign they were talking about mass deportations, and then like toward the end of the campaign, I mean, he started kind of shifting his I don't want to say rhetoric. That sounds not rhetoric, but he started kind of shifting his view, I guess. He started shifting his view and sort of his talking points. It went from like mass deportations to sort of like, well, we want to incarcerate the criminal ones, but we want to fast track the people that are here that have been working here in the farms and things like that. We want to kind of fast track them to citizenship. And so, while some are like, that's a good idea. Others are a little bit more skeptical of the idea because they think it poses it defeats the purpose of deportations in their eyes.
Well, I think he hasn't really shifted view. I'd say that like he's probably listening to people more because I mean I agree with mass deportation of illegal immigrants, and I think that's like the main thing is like he raised the fee for the visas.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so like it's like he wants more, as he said, Elon Musk. He wants more skilled workers. So I think he's just listening to the people more because he's still letting people in. It's just he wants a certain type of people, but based on what they can do for the country, which you should always want, I guess.
Yeah, I get that. What else was noteworthy? Oh yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene. What are your thoughts on her?
I don't even know who that is. I'm not gonna lie.
Really?
No.
Oh, she got a lot of flack recently. Well, she's been getting a lot of flack. Like I think in 2022, 23, I can't remember. That wasn't the main point of but it doesn't matter. She's been controversial. She spoke at one of Nick Fuentes' events. Do you know anything about Nick Fuentes?
We've talked a little about him. All I know is he's a little radical, is what I've gathered.
Just a little bit. So she spoke at one of his events, like his political conference. It's called AFPAC. And she spoke at one of them, and there was a lot of because of who he is. It was sort of like guilt by association kind of thing.
Yeah.
And at first she disavowed, but in more recent years she's like not really disavowed. She's sort of like changed her opinion on it a little bit. And then, but I'm sorry, I digress a little bit. The main reason why she's sort of getting a lot of attention is because, well, she announced her resignation. And she had announced her resignation because her and Trump had a falling out of sorts, because of the Epstein file issue. So her, Thomas Massie, Nancy Mace even, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Nancy Mace, Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they were very big on releasing the files. And of course, in May, June, July, August, September, up until like the government shutdown, after the government shutdown, Trump was very, very against releasing the files.
But I thought he had said, like, in his campaign that he wanted to release the files.
He did say that in the campaign. So I'll give you a little bit of a timeline. I'll try to be even more brief than I was last time, because I don't want like my audience to feel like, you know, I'm just saying the same things over and over again, because I already do that on the show. But I will. So brief, very brief. I'll try, but I talk a lot. So in February, he releases the file. He releases the files. I'm putting that in air quotes. It basically, he gives several social media influencers a big binder that says Epstein Files Phase 2 or something like that. I can't remember. So very, very big binder. Looks like there's a lot of content in it. He only gives it to these influencers though. And so all they do is like they use it as a prop. They're like showing it off and stuff. And everybody was pretty much outraged by it. They said, "Hey, like, are you gonna like give the files to the public? Why don't you do that instead? That makes more sense, because then more people will have access to it as opposed to like these few social media influencers." And so after about, let's see if I can recall, I think a month or so, a few weeks or to a month, the administration finally releases the files. But they're not all the files. Basically, all of the files that they released were already released beforehand. So no new files at all, just pre-existing files. So people were understandably upset. They said, "Hey, where's our files? Like you promised us files. Where's the files?" And funny enough, in May, this is like a while in. Well, at first, there was like fighting. There's a little bit of infighting. So the FBI was like blaming the Attorney General for not releasing the files. The Attorney General was blaming the FBI. It was a whole debacle. And then in May, there was, Donald Trump. He asked the FBI to search for his name in the files.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And so that's, and they did find his name in the files. And so, and that doesn't, keep in mind that doesn't necessarily mean that he was like guilty of every single thing that Epstein might have been guilty of, but, there was some, there was backlash with that. And so eventually the DOJ, I believe it was July 7th. It was on July 7th. They release a statement. The DOJ releases a statement and says that the Epstein files do not exist. They do not exist.
They don't exist.
They do not exist. Yes, that is what the DOJ says. And so the DOJ says this, and Donald Trump, he goes on Truth Social and he's like, "This is a Democrat hoax. If you're voting to release if you're talking about releasing the files, this is a hoax. This is a hoax. Stop fighting over the files. And a lot of people are saying, "Hey, like a lot of people kind of switched their tune a little bit." I remember, because I listened to 98.9 WRID, the voice of the Carolinas, right? So like the Mike, not the Mike Gallagher show, the Charlie James show, Tara show, those people, Mike Levin. And so I hear them talking, and they shift viewpoints like instantaneously. They go from like, we're gonna release the files, and it goes from that to like, yeah, it's a hoax, man. They're trying to distract you from the healthcare issue, because after this it was like the government shut down, so they're trying to distract you from the healthcare issue, from SNAP and everything else. And it was just very bizarre how they switched up like that. And so after this fighting, after this, it's a Democrat hoax and everything else, he started calling people who were like, no, we want the files released, like Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace. Eventually, I don't think she was like at the start of it she was like that, but I think like later on she kind of like hopped on board. I can't remember. I'm sure there were a couple other Republican congressmen and women, but I cannot remember. They were like, no, let's do this petition. We're going to release the files. Okay, sorry. I get paranoid every time I hear something that I think is vibrating. I get paranoid that it's like my dad telling me that like I have dead air, because he listens to the show, and so when there's a technical issue, he normally texts me. But anyway, so there's this big fight, and like Donald Trump literally calls Marjorie Taylor Greene. He said, and this lady, she's like a loyalist to Trump. Like she defended like the January 6th thing, like very, very like dedicated to Trump. Stop the steal, like very dedicated to Trump. Like that's how she rose to the ranks. She was Trump's top guy. But Trump like calls her like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and like talking about like primarying her and like all this other stuff, revoking her endorsement and crazy stuff. And I mean, and there was an interesting point about that too, where he was like, you know, all these people, they only cared about the Epstein files because I'm president. And maybe to some extent that's true. In some ways that's true. Like I kind of see how there's like a political issue, but a point that has to be made is like, if it's not that big of a deal, then just release them, you know. Which he did give in, and I appreciate the fact that he did give in. I think a lot of people were a little frustrated with the hesitancy, but he did fold, and he did say like, hey, really vote to release the files. There's nothing on them, which is I think what a lot of people were hoping he would say, like to begin with. So that's good that they're getting released. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, she said she was going to resign. I think it's effective January 14th, but do not quote me on that. I know it's January for sure. So she's going to start, that basically starts a special election. So we'll see what happens. Crazy. I don't know why she resigned though.
I mean, I could see it. If you say something and it's not heard, then just resign. But I think it says a lot about his character, honestly, because he seems like through this term that he's kind of been like just do what he wants a little bit, and it's like to the extent what the people want. But like, I think it shows how mature he is, that he's willing to like when he truly doesn't want to do it, like he goes with what the people say. Yeah.
I think it is good that he did fold on that issue. I'm very glad. I hope that like kind of like goes through the Senate well too. I don't remember if they voted on that yet or not, but I hope it turns out okay. I said there was gonna be a third topic, but
we could talk about No King's Day.
No King.
Yes, that was insane. I live in Florida, and there was a No King's Day in Florida, and genuinely, like, the sheriffs do not care. They were literally like, if they're in the roads are for cars, run them over. Like,
really?
Yes. So it stopped real quick in Florida.
So we had I saw one in Greenville, I think it was. Yeah, I saw one in Greenville, and it was, me and McHenry talked about this actually, like on like the third show or something, before these things got recorded. We were talking about like how it was just so weird how all of these different causes kind of got like mashed together.
Yeah.
And I think because of how incomprehensive it was, like, yes, it was a huge protest. I'm not going to deny that at all. But I think a lot of people kind of came to the conclusion that it was very unfocused. Like, nobody knew why they were there. And there are allegations of, like, you know, people being paid to lead and organize these protests and people being paid to come. And because I remember we were driving past the bridge and there's like this, everybody calls it the protest bridge. I don't know the actual name for it, but it's called the protest bridge. Everybody calls it that. There's people, they were in like their animal costumes. That's one thing. No, not furries. Like those inflatable costumes, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. That's one thing I do like about the No Kings protests is that they're just so silly. Like they're not like, you know, it's not like they're like burning buildings down or something. Like I appreciate their silliness. I appreciate their whimsy. I'll give them that. I appreciate their whimsy. But there's a lot of different, like, there was like a Ukraine flag, there was a Palestine flag, there was a pride flag. There was like release the files, and then there was like it felt like a very it just felt unfocused. I think a lot of people felt that, and I think that's why they were so ineffective. Although there was a large turnout, I think that the large turnout didn't really mean anything because they were all standing there for different reasons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like they're not educated, honestly. Like when you go out and you do something for that, like when you're protesting things, you should probably know more about it than what your TikTok told you, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And it's just like the LA riots. Like I think that was going on around the same time, at least to like when I got the information of the No Kings riot and the LA riots. They were happening about the same time, releasing the guard to go take care of them. And I thought that was kind of ironic. Like all these people that don't want to leave, but they're holding up their like
Mexican flags. Yeah, yes. I remember that.
Yes. I remember that. You're gonna destroy it here, but you want to be here, but you're holding up the flag of where you don't want to go.
Yeah, it's because I think it's. I mean, in reality, this is my honest opinion. I think everybody's a nationalist in that, and that's it. I think everybody has a national identity. To an extent, yeah. Everybody has a national identity. Everybody's proud of where they come from, or maybe not where they come from, but they're proud of a nation. They're proud of, and part of that is like what they identify with. It doesn't even matter where they're at. They're gonna have pride in, say, Mexico or something. And so it's strange. Well, it's not really strange because a lot of so America's, it seems that a lot of people are selling America as the land of economic opportunity. And because it's the land of opportunity, there are a lot of people that want to travel to take advantage of the opportunity, but they don't want to pledge allegiance to the nation. They don't really, it's not their nation to them, it's an opportunity. And being tighter on immigration doesn't necessarily mean you don't understand their position. Like, yeah, if I had a family and I was living in a third world country, I would absolutely travel to the United States for economic opportunity. But I think that you can still foster like border security and things like that while understanding people's motivations and not being, you can't pretend to not, like, I will admit to you straight up, like, yeah, I would probably do that, but if I got caught, I wouldn't really be mad because, if you're breaking somebody's laws, their customs, their laws,
people are outraged, but think of it like this with surveys done, like the people who came in the right way, they're not outraged because they had to go through that process. I think that's like, it's the fairness in it. Like, I understand you want to live a better life. We all did. My great-grandparents came from the Philippines, but again, they did it the right way. My great-grandpa, whoever he was, he joined the military, like, you still got to do things the right way because at the end of the day, it is illegal. And you might say, well, there's different like levels to illegal. It's still illegal.
Yeah, it's, a lot of people make the argument that compassion should override this, but I think you can be, because when we think about the amnesty system, for instance, do you know the percentage of people that, like, when they're legitimate asylum seekers, do you know where they go?
Where?
They go to the neighboring country. They don't travel across the sea to the United States if they're asylum seekers, if they're true asylum seekers. But
oh yeah, just cross the borders, yeah.
Yeah, they just go to the next neighboring country. But
we have, like, things for that, we have policies and different things for those humanitarian issues. So to kind of everybody claim it, because that's what happened with the Biden administration.
Yeah.
Everyone was claiming asylum, and so it kind of lost its potency, which I agree for Trump to kind of tighten the grips on it, because then everyone's just going to say, well, I'm seeking asylum.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like, from across the world and stuff, or not even across the world, but even farther down south, like more south than Mexico, they'll trek through country after country after country, and it gets to a point where it's like, okay, are you really seeking, like, safety? Are you seeking asylum, or are you seeking economic opportunity? Because there's a different path for both of those things. I think that because it's just so much going on that, if we had, it's just a lot right now. There's so many illegal immigrants right now because of previous administration's policies, and also just, generally pre-COVID. I don't know if you knew this, but immigration actually, it didn't spike under Biden's administration. It started spiking toward the end of Donald Trump's administration. So, yeah, I didn't know if you knew that, but like before Biden, like a couple months before Biden took office, it skyrocketed.
But again, it's probably because they knew who was coming into power and what he was promising.
That's true too. I
think it's just very interesting because there are other countries, and everyone wants to complain about America, but everyone wants to come to America. Like, there's a lot of other countries with a lot of better benefits. I mean, even people in America say they want to go to Switzerland because of the free education. They can go, but they don't.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about, like, about people who come in and they're, or even this is the same thing would apply to dual citizens too. There's this idea of, like, hey, if this ship sinks, I'm going to move on to the next one. But when you have people who are, like, dedicated to the nation, and they're looking for ways to better the nation because in their head they're stuck there. That's their home. That's their country. If their country burns, they do too. They burn with it, metaphorically speaking. So I think there's something to be said about, like, the right way should stay sort of like as a, I think it should be not a ridiculously long process, but it shouldn't be like fast tracked, I guess, because you have to kind of soak it in. You have to become part of the nation, and I think there is no substitute for time, right? Time spent in the country and learning about the country. Same thing, like, because otherwise you're sort of a tourist, not literally a tourist, but you're sort of, or you're a commuter, I guess is a better way to put it. It's just a very long commute, but if I'm visiting Japan for like 3 months or something like that, and I'm coming back for the holidays, and or maybe if I'm not visiting, if I'm just like studying abroad, and I'm coming home for the holidays, I'm coming home for like summer break or something. If I do all that, then I'm probably not going to have as much of a vested interest in Japan's national policy, because that's not me. But if I lived there, then yeah, I think I'd have a more vested interest in it, which I think, so in that vein, I think a lot of people are skeptical of some of Trump's ideas with the fast track to citizenship, like stapling green cards to degrees and things like that, and talking about how he's going to, because he did say this too, he said that if farmers and things like that, if they self-deport, that they can go right on back, and he'll give them a fast track to citizenship, which I don't think a lot of his base would want that, just for that, you know, like, these people need to be like assimilated. That's the argument. Like, a lot of these people, they don't speak English very well, or, you know, or at all, and so there should be like a process of like kind of like quote unquote becoming American, you know.
Arthur, there is a language test, but I do see his point. We do need these things. We do need farmers. We do need more people with degrees, because, I mean, historically, like, in the last 10 years, we've had 2 million less applicants to college. So bringing in people outside just makes sense that are, you know, going to have those higher paying jobs.
I'd argue that, like, I get it from sort of like I don't know what you would call this perspective, but I get it from like I get where you're coming from, is what I'm going to say. But I think it's also important to be like, hey, you know, we're America, we should serve Americans, right? Mm-hmm. So if we have, you know, and that's not, you know, I'm not saying we can't have international students or anything like that, but when you're bringing in like 600,000 Chinese students into these colleges, I mean, that's funding too, and he's talking about saving these colleges from, you know, getting shut down. But like, these colleges, they take public funding, and if they're not successful, what we're doing is we're educating other countries so they either leave, they go back to their countries and they innovate, or they come over here and they take the funding and things like that, and they take a job where maybe part of the problem is that college is too expensive, or, you know, the prices have been inflated because everybody's been told that they need one in order to thrive in society. And so you get a lot of people that want to go to college, they end up in debt, and they find out, you know, they get out, they find out, they're like, oh, you know, they cut their employees. Now they have a lot of H-1B visa holders, because a lot of these guys, they work for cheap, and they work for cheap because they're working for their citizenship. Mm-hmm. And because H-1B visas in particular, they're tied to a corporation, so they can't, like, they'd be like, I quit, I'm going to get another job. They can't do that. So it's sort of like indentured servitude back in a while ago, colonial America. That's how a lot of Irishmen came here too, is indentured servitude. They would have a contract for a couple years where they'd pretty much be slaves for a little bit in order to kind of like work their way to be a citizen of the United States and to own property and things like that. So it's sort of the same process, except not as inhumane. And it's yeah. I'm not a fan of it, because it seems to be exploiting people, like for short-term, like, not unpaid labor. It's cheaper labor, and then it's also, you're letting these people go into the workforce, into America, and there could be a values misalignment where they're just kind of like here for the economic benefits, because while they're working under the H-1B visa, yes, they're making way less than they would be in India. But once they get out of that, now they're in a position to work a higher position, higher paying position. Oh, okay. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. I have to do a mid-show station ID. This is just a reminder that you're listening to WPCX in Clinton, South Carolina, on the campus of Presbyterian College. That's 97.1 FM, or you can listen to us on the WPCX app on iOS or Android. I will also check the chat real quick because things happen and there's always a significant delay in the chat. Please use the chat. Please ask questions or talk about politics. I don't know. Do something, anything. But anyway, like I was saying, I think that they get those higher paying positions and they already have this experience built in, and so they work their way up very, very quickly. And I think what's missing with Americans, because a lot of these newer immigrants, there's a lot of loyalty with their national identity, and so when they see people of that same identity, they will prefer them over. I'll put it this way: it's not exactly meritocratic. It's a lot of bias in that sense. So then you get hiring boards that are extremely biased toward a particular group of people that isn't exactly meritocratic. And then next thing you know, Americans are struggling to find work in their own country, which is, that's unfortunate. And we see it now because, like I said, a lot of people are working for their college degrees. They're in debt. They come out of college and okay, well, and they're struggling to find jobs. They're struggling very hard to find jobs because they were told that this was going to be the degree is like going to be perfect for you. You're gonna get into the workforce. If you don't get into the workforce, you're trying to go for a job that somebody else kind of like takes it from you. And it's just, it's an unfortunate circumstance, and a lot of people are there's an unemployment rate, but also a lot of people are being underemployed. Like these are people with degrees working at like Starbucks or something. That wasn't a personal insult on anybody, okay?
Nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with it. I didn't mean like, you know what I mean,
It
though.
just seems like it's the reality right now.
Yeah, a lot of people are like that, and a lot of people are struggling to afford housing, and healthcare has always been somewhat of an issue, but housing, people can't buy cars. It's been very unfortunate.
We still need like these new people though. We need outside blood, I think. I mean, a lot of our inventions didn't come from American-born people. They came from, I forgot what class it is. I really don't listen to class, but one of our biggest inventors literally came from Syria. His parents were Syrian. They brought him here. I think he created, Apple or something. I don't know. So we do need these people outside.
Oh, are you talking about Steve Jobs?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Some big inventor, their parents came from Syria. We need these outside blood. And, I think the appeal of America will keep them. And to the unemployment rate, yes, there are a lot of people without jobs, but, think about what Obama did with Obamacare and the unemployment, the money you get with that. A lot of people, stay on that because it's just comfortable.
That's, I see what you're saying there, too, but, like I said, a lot of people, and it's not just college either. A lot of people, they get told to go into technical school and to get HVAC certifications and things like that too, and then they go in a lot less debt than if you were in college, but they still go in debt. And then as it turns out, okay, now we have a lot of immigrants that are kind of doing their own thing. They're doing their contractor businesses and stuff, and it's a lot cheaper. And now you're in an oversaturated market when I'm not going to call it Ben Shapiro, but he did say this. Unless because you went to technical school because Ben Shapiro told you the colleges are woke. Don't go to the colleges. Go to the technical schools. Become a plumber or something. So it's on both sides of it. It's just I think our generation has been dealt in some ways an unfair hand. Now I will admit. There's a lot of lazy people in there. Okay, I will completely admit that there's a lot of people that take advantage of benefits. But I will say that I think a good chunk of our generation is looking forward to work. There's a lot of people that we're excited about. Don't get me wrong, there are degrees that are a little more questionable. but
Art majors.
Yeah.
History majors.
Well, you can. I mean, the director of faculty, the faculty advisor for this station actually is an art major. So.
Well, I think it just goes to show that, like, we just need more entrepreneurship, because at the end of the day, there's always a market for something. So if you want to be employed, you can, but, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. But my thing is just, like, it's difficult when you're competing with the whole world. You know, and I understand what you're saying about. I'm not saying immigration itself is bad, but I think a lot of it all at once.
Which is why we have quotas, though, and maybe those need to be adjusted. I think the policy changes so often with each administration that it is kind of hard to get like a grasp on it. But so, would you agree, I guess, on Trump's more closed policy?
Oh yeah, I mean, I want it to be closed. I just feel, the deportations haven't been sufficient enough for him to bring in more people, because during the campaign he promised mass deportations, and then it was like we're gonna deport millions a year, and then it became 1 million a year, and then it became 1 million within the span of 4 years, which is
But it's
crazy.
Still hard, because with these mass deportations, like, they are turning to racial, what's it called?
Profiling.
Yeah, which is against your constitutional right. So it kind of does come to an extent of, like, people aren't going to carry their birth certificate. I was born in England. I'm not carrying my birth certificate around, So since you can't use racial profiling, it kind of does become harder.
I think in some way, yeah, I get that too. It is. I understand that it can be difficult, but I think we have the capabilities of going. We have the resources to go to be a lot more efficient. I think that we're not utilizing, because, as Trump said, he's not going to go after the farmers or anything else, because there is an economic kind of problem with that. And the thing is that Trump kind of had, like, he added a lot to his goals, because the incumbent prices were high and things like that. So this is just me kind of thinking about, like, his perspective. He made that promise, and then he probably realized how much was involved economically wise, which is why he kind of backed down on the stance, and he softened it, which and he probably would have seen a lot of backlash. But to me, it's, you're not going for re-election. There's no point. Like, who cares about politics in that way? It's like, you promise the people something, and let them decide if they regret it or not. I know it sounds that sounds very risky, but
it is risky.
Or at least, I mean, you don't have to, like, because we're assuming that ICE can just, like, capture them all in one day, which isn't the case. But so you can target them. You can target them indiscriminately.
Then how do you target them? Because you're not going to get pulled over by ICE. And again, like, I feel like I'm very conservative even, but it is to a point that no ICE agent is going to come up to you and be like, "Where's your green card?" Because you have to look for certain key points. That's what I'm saying.
No. We can handle that problem. We can, like, debate that problem. But for me, it's just like he explicitly said that he's basically going to, like, he's going to look the other way when it comes to farmers and things like that, which I don't agree with. He could have said, like, hey, it's just really difficult finding these people. Perfectly fine, perfectly valid. But
those are jobs we need, though. There's 3 Ds, but I can only remember 2 of them. Dirty, dangerous. Those are jobs that illegal immigrants take because no one else wants to do them. So, I mean, there should be a policy about maybe not fast tracking, like you were saying, but those are jobs no one else wants to do, so why would you kick out the people who will do them? Especially since they're doing them at such a discount, you'd say.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, I mean, don't you think, that's a little unfair, though. I mean, if they're doing it at such a discounted rate, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's sort of like mutual in some ways, because they're in there, they're also eligible for, like, government benefits, so they kind of take those too. But it's also, in some ways, it is exploitation because they're working at a lower price. You know, I mean, we could talk about, if you're fine with people working at a lower price, we can talk about lowering the minimum wage. I mean, that's fine, but I think there are people that are willing to do the job that just want to be paid equally for it, like fairly for it. And so I don't think it's like, it shouldn't be, they shouldn't be treated like worse because they just want, you know, they want what's like every other American, they just want like a livable wage. And I'm not one of those people like, you should raise the minimum wage, you know, but you know, I'm fine with where it's at.
It's like $8 here, isn't it? It's super low.
Yeah, I mean, you know, because I think that, you know, there are a lot of young people that, you know, maybe they want to go into the workforce early, and maybe they want to work at, like, you know, McDonald's or something like that. Because a lot of H-1Bs, they not only are they in the tech industry, like as developers and things like that, they can also go into McDonald's, like all these fast food chains and like stores and things like that. And those are jobs that a lot of people believe that are like for young people to kind of learn, because they're not high paying jobs and they're not extremely risky either. And so, and I think agriculture can be part of that too. I mean, I would just encourage the youth to participate in the workforce earlier. If the problem is just numbers, I think that maybe programs to allow people, like internships and things like that, I think that would be the solution.
That's another generational shift we've seen, though. Haven't you like kind of noticed that like less people are working at a younger age? So that's another reason that I feel like people are coming in, because we have old people and we don't have a baby boom like a couple generations ago. So it's kind of necessary for others to come in.
I don't know. Well, I see what you're saying, but I think that if we have this, then there's like no opportunity, because it's sort of a cycle, right? We don't have that much of a population, and so we import a lot of people, and then we import a lot of people, and then it's like, oh well, the finances here, there's so much competition. I don't think we can afford children or anything like that. There's no housing, there's no way to start a family. And so it's sort of like it feeds itself. So I think that's part of the problem. I think if we just like, if we chilled out, if we're like, okay, we're not worried about the GDP right now, we might take a bit of an economic hit if we just settle down on the immigration. Because I don't know if you knew this, but 28% of Generation Z has been aborted. So a lot of the vacancies that you see, yeah, that's
Roe
what I'm saying.
versus Wade, like that definitely needs to change.
Yeah, a lot of what you see is like vacancy too. That's almost a third of Gen Z was aborted, so that's part of it.
But do you see the new bills coming out about it? I think even South Carolina representatives are talking about it. Like they're banning like abortion pills.
Yeah, they were talking about it. I know they're talking about it. I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be passed. I know some countries have not countries. I know some states have already banned it outright. I cannot remember which states, but I know that some of them are our neighbors. So
I know a lot of people are freaking out about it because this is a lot of miseducation on these people, uneducated people, thinking that they're going to take away medical birth control. But I don't know. What do you feel about that? Because it's coming from a man. People might get upset, but I feel that, you know, I don't really agree with it because I think people are taking advantage of it.
Yeah,
We're gonna see this on Yik Yak later.
Well, so I believe that life begins at conception. A lot of scientists
it's scientifically proven.
Yes, it's scientifically proven that life begins at conception, and I think the law is very clear that you shouldn't kill people, and so you shouldn't kill human beings because that's homicide.
Yep.
So on that alone, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but on that alone, I think that it is murder legally too, because also if a pregnant woman is killed, it's considered a double homicide. That's, you know, from a legal perspective, strictly legally, yeah, no.
I think Well, I mean, some people would argue that. I think it's more of the, it's my body, it's my choice, but
bodily autonomy, yeah.
You're also choosing for your child.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic that I think a lot of people get wrapped up in very exceptional cases, and that's sort of what defines their position on it. And I think pretty much, I think that's about it. I think it comes from a lot of, like, first, I think a few things. I think it comes from a lot of people that, like, they don't like the concept of birthing a child at all.
And it grosses ties too, I think.
Really, yeah, I think so. And so, because you get there's a lot of pushing to, like, I don't know what the right word is. I wouldn't say demonize, but to make pregnancy and to make giving birth sound grotesque and painful. And I'm not saying it's not painful. I wouldn't know.
Have you seen this reel? It's this girl and she has this, like, public Google Docs, and it's literally like there's over like 400 reasons why she doesn't want to give birth, and it's like ruining my body. The baby's gonna wake me up. It's insane. It really does demonize, but that's social media for you.
Yeah, I think it's so. I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this, but I think it's sort of coping with this idea that maybe they don't see that as attainable for themselves, and so it's like, well, I didn't want to do it anyway. I think that's sort of part of it. And then I think also it means more responsibilities, and I think a lot of people are
those family values, I think, especially since like the 70s, like the sex boom, and then like I think we've just definitely head into a direction where like family values aren't it, I guess.
Yeah, well, it comes from, I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from critical theory. And critical theory it's derived from, I'm going to say the word, and I don't want any of you guys to freak out, because it's just like, it's going to sound so like, what's the word I'm thinking of? Generic, I guess?
Generic.
Yeah, because I'm going to, so it comes from Marxists. From like, and you're like, oh, one of those guys, huh? But it comes from Marxists in the Frankfurt School in Germany. A lot of our students, a lot of United States students, they came over there, they visited, and they also studied there. And they came back around the 60s. This is when we get like the hippie stuff, 60s, 70s, whatever. They came back with these ideas, this idea of critical theory, and you kind of look at all social relationships, all economic disparities, and you look at all of it and you say, okay, this is because of inequality. This is because of some inherent discrimination. And so with critical theory, which is more like class-based, it's more like, it has more to do with like income and stuff like that. With critical theory, you got critical race theory, a similar thing, but it had a class structure that was more based on race, obviously. And then you had critical gender theory, which again, same thing, but it's sort of like, oh, you have the patriarchy, and pretty much, if you read into it, it's very, very weird.
And like Taylor weird.
I'm not gonna. I don't mean to, like. I try not to be very partisan. I try to be very nonpartisan, but I think everybody could agree with me and say that it is weird when you read into it, because it boils down to sort of like. It's funny because it's like it infantilizes women and basically says that, they basically says that they cannot consent, pretty much. Yeah, so it's a patriarchal system, and heterosexual relationships are just not, they're toxic, and it's crazy what's with critical gender theory, because it talks about how there's a power structure, there's a power structure with it, and so the idea is if there's a power imbalance, there's no real consent, because there's like this, like, vague threat, I guess, of like overpowering or whatever. So that like basically everything a woman would do for her husband, it's like slavery, it's like imprisonment, and and that was very big. It was very big. It started with the baby boomers. It started with the baby boomers, and then it just kept climbing.
It's a little ironic, immigrants bringing over new cultural ideals.
Okay, all right. But yeah, it is. Well, no, they were like students that like they just traveled to Germany. They studied abroad and then they like came back. But yeah, pretty much. It's crazy because if you look into it. Hold on, I need to check the chat again because I know people are going to be mad if I don't read the chat. Okay, I don't see anything. It's not my fault if I haven't read it because the laptop doesn't show it. So, but it's interesting because if you look into the Soviet Union and how they used to, I guess it would be like their version of a color revolution. If you look at how they did things, how they used ideological subversion, you get into like pretty much what happened to us in the 60s and 70s and what's happening now. It's like you break up the family structure. Yuri Bezmenov had a really good lecture on it, and I watched him in middle school because they had like a little cameo in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. There's like it showed in like one of the trailers. It was this guy Yuri Bezmenov, and it showed him like in a video about I can't remember what it was about. It was like some interview, but I looked him up after that, and I learned about ideological subversion, like because he's an ex-KGB agent, and he defected to the CIA. So like in the 90s, he had like a series of lectures about like KGB tactics. But anyway, it's talking about like breaking up the family structure, removing religion from the society, like perverting it pretty much, and then making people reliant on the state. And then it specifically talks about focusing on like trying to gain allies within minority groups or within what is considered to be marginalized groups. So like women, like racial minorities, what would you call that? I don't think that sounds right, but I'll say it anyway. Sexual minorities, like like homosexuals, things like that, and you kind of like gather them together, and you kind of form a coalition behind it. You take all these small groups and you organize them into one big group, and like social, like society is sort of like, no, is it derogative? I'm not gonna say that. We'll stick to what I got. You take it into one big group, one big coalition, and then you sort of, it's sort of a counter to, and it's already pre-existing. It's already a pre-existing sort of block. They're loosely organized, and you're just sort of redirecting that small counterculture, and you're growing it, and you're kind of focusing it in on different institutions, which I find that interesting. That's all I'm gonna say. But we're about done. We're about done because my time is short. We got 2 minutes left, so I will say this again. You're listening to WPCX. That's 97.1 FM in Clinton, South Carolina, on the campus of Presbyterian College, or you can listen to us on the app on iOS or Android. And this is Current Climate. I'm your host, Brennan Carroll. This is Lana Clayton. She's the guest host. Okay, here's the opinions disclaimer again. This program is produced by students at Presbyterian College in Clinton, South Carolina. Views and opinions expressed on this station are those of student producers and do not necessarily reflect official views of the college. Thank you for listening to WPCX. Okay. All right, now we're officially done. Goodbye, everybody. You can say your goodbyes too.
Bye, guys. It was fun being on here.
Yeah, thanks for coming over last minute.
Yeah, of course. Who doesn't like to talk about politics?
It's gonna be loud in like 2 seconds.